Today on the Videomaker podcast, Chris and I talked to Jordan Brady, the creator and the host of the Respect the Process podcast, and also the creator of the Commercial Directing Film School, or commercialdirectingfilmschool.com. He's an expert in commercial directing. He's a commercial filmmaker himself. So we talk all about commercials. Listeners of this podcast know that Chris and I both come from a commercial background, so it was really interesting to both of us. Hope you all learned something as well. As always, if you've been listening to the podcast and you enjoy it, we'd love it if you went to iTunes or Spotify and hit the follow or the heart or the subscribe button and have the podcast delivered right to your mobile device every week. It's really convenient, also helpful to us. And as you know, the podcast comes out at 5 a.m. on Mondays, so no one wants to get up and download. So just hit that button and it will deliver straight to your device. So with all that out of the way, let's get on with it. Welcome to the Videomaker podcast. I'm Mike Wilhelm, and with me today, as always, is Chris Monlux.
Hello.
And our guest today, Jordan Brady. Jordan, how's it going?
Thank you for having me on the program.
Yeah,
today's going great.
All right, great to hear. It's we love to hear that kind of positivity in 2020. You don't hear it very often. It
is the beginning of the day.
I listened to the show, so I'm flattered to be on. I was just I don't know when this comes out, but I was wrapping up Noam Kroll. Noel. Mm-hmm. And I learned a lot. It was very enthusiastic, entrepreneur, filmmaker, and the content that you guys are putting out is very helpful to myself and to people that are just starting out or been doing it a long time.
All right. Well, thank you for the compliment. And our audience probably knows you from your podcast, the Respect the Process podcast, where you talk about commercial filmmaking, which I've listened to a handful. Pardon me?
What a niche.
Yeah, exactly. Actually, it's quite fitting. Chris and I, you guys have had a chat in the recent past, and Chris and I both come from the commercial filmmaking background. So this is going to be an exciting conversation, I think. So actually, maybe to get started, as our audience may know you from your work or your podcast and your work doing commercial films, but maybe you could just give us like the 30,000 foot view. What is your history with filmmaking and video? How did you get started?
Wow. I was a stand-up comedian in the mid 80s for about 15 years professionally. I toured over 300 cities in North America, a couple of places in Europe. I've been to every state in the United States except Maine. I've never been to Maine. And I mean, when I say go there, I mean I work there in a terrible bar or a comedy club that sprung up. And then I moved to California, had a brief stint in San Francisco and said, LA's the place, baby. And because I wanted to be in television, I was a performer. And then I got, it's pretty logical career trajectory. I went from comedian to a game show host. And as a game show host, I started noticing all the production. And I had a camera with me on the road, like an 8mm, not even high 8 then. It was just like 8mm. And the Sony camera, if you turned it on its side, it was a deck. You could edit tape to tape. And then I just started working on the shows that I was hosting. And I realized, okay, that's one track. So I wrote a script, did some movies. And while I was making movies, this company said, hey, do you want to make commercials? And I was like, yeah. And that became a 22-year career of making commercials. I mean, it makes sense, right? It's just kind of same old story, comedian, game show host, director.
Yeah, right.
That's a typical career path for many. Yeah.
Listeners are rolling their eyes like, oh, not this again.
Uh-huh. So that transition from front of the screen, front of the camera to behind the camera must have been quite a shift, right? Like you're kind of putting on a major different hat in those cases. So how was that transition for you? What was it like to be, the subject of content, shifting over to, the person who is directing? Was it everything that you expected it to be?
Mike, it was actually a gradual transition. For the Googler out there, if you Google "name your adventure," you'll see a picture of teen heartthrob Mario Lopez, who has some secret anti-aging cream that he puts on. He looks the same. So, excuse me, in the 90s, first I did this game show for MTV. It lasted like a year. It was called Turn It Up. It was like a rock and roll Jeopardy kind of show. I was thin, I was pretty, I had a mullet. But back then we didn't call it a mullet. It was called a soccer cut, right? That's right. But it was a mullet. And so the MTV hosting, I started meeting with the producers, and I was actually on the road as a comedian doing, like, I would set up the camera and do promos for Comedy Central and a little bit for MTV, but really for Comedy Central. And I hosted one of their shows for a short-lived time. But I would go to like Houston to the Laugh Stop or whatever it was. And during the day, like, how much weed can you smoke, right? You got to do something productive. So I had this camera, and they would send me a box of, I think by this point it was high 8 tapes, and I would ship them back, like these little coming up next, or, hey, I'm on the road in Houston. And so I was directing myself. And then with the show Name Your Adventure, I was hosting I think this is kind of funny now as a grown-up. I was hosting the segments of the show for Name Your Adventure that the insurance company deemed too risky for Mario Lopez. Because he was on Saved by the Bell. So Mario wasn't going to go shark diving. But Jordan Brady, who we don't know, this comedian, he can go shark diving. So to answer your question, I was directing myself in a scripted, loosely scripted, manipulated reality show. And I knew the shots, I knew the camera. And so that was my segue. And then I started directing more of Mario's stuff, and Tatiana Ali came on the show. This is like going way back. And I started directing more than I was in the shows. So that's how I transitioned to behind the camera. It wasn't like one day I went, oh shit, what do I do? I'm not in front anymore.
So there's quite a bit of a difference in motivation, right? Like why you would head in either of these two career paths. And I'm not an in front of the camera person generally outside of like this podcast, I guess.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you. But there's like, I've noticed that people who are in front of the camera quite a bit, you know, they get this satisfaction out of kind of the attention they get of being on camera and appearing on television and all that kind of thing. Which obviously doesn't exist for people who are solely behind the camera. And behind the camera, people are all about, you know, telling stories and all that kind of thing. So as you went along, did you find yourself sort of missing that high that you might get from the attention of being a game show host or a stand-up comedian?
Absolutely. But being a commercial director, I will dip into the well of not the old material, but the stand-up skills, you know, to keep the crew laughing, to keep my clients and agency folks, you know, happy. I like to run a funny set because I do comedy, and call me crazy, but I feel like if the day is fun, maybe some of that magic will sprinkle into the film. So I do scratch that itch. And then I have my personal projects and documentaries that I appear in a small percentage. So I definitely have that that need to be a performer. I've been actually in a couple of commercials over the years too that I've directed. The best thing about being a director, and I'm sure, like, I think George Clooney makes great movies that he's in. And I'm not comparing myself to George Clooney, although we do have great eyebrows. You know, he if you ever watch George Clooney, he especially in that movie where he was a realtor in Hawaii, like, he's really working the eyebrows. But I can look at the lens. Like, if I go talk to the actor and I look back at the camera, I can am I in the frame? Am I out of the frame? Like, I just know the edges of the frame from looking into the lens from the other side, which is kind of a fun little trick. I'm in, I'm out. Right here, here's the line. Just by seeing the aperture, you know,
Yeah, that's quite a skill. Maybe one that is a little harder today, right? With this webcam, we were just talking about that before we started rolling.
I can't even tell right now.
Yeah.
I think I'm all over the place.
Chris will yell at you, I guess. So it sounds like you sort of got into commercials the way that a lot of us get into whatever career that we're in, where it just sort of happens over time. And there's maybe not, I don't know if this happens with you, a conscious effort to be like, I'm going to be a commercial director, and you sort of set your sights on that and you go for it. But one circumstance leads to another, and then you find out that you're a commercial director. But as you mentioned, you've also done other work, right? Like documentary work.
Yes, sir.
So at some point, did you ever give thought to that specific direction to go, well, actually, maybe I should do the documentary thing and put commercials on the side, or what? Like, what's the decision, or was there a decision to go specifically after commercial directing?
There was a specific decision to go after commercial directing after a modest flop of a feature career. So I'm doing the game shows, the reality show, and I should note that I was doing promos. I had a production company. I would do promos, especially for Comedy Central. Like, we did Dave Chappelle's first, he was like a 23-year-old, and we did a promo piece, like a 2-minute little. Remember MTV had those campaigns revolving around an actor or a comedian or a personality? I forget what they called them, like interstitial programming. So I was doing a lot of that and doing a lot of promos for like Ben Stiller's show and some other comedy shows. And so that was a segue into commercials. And I always loved Darren Stevens on a show called Bewitched, this sitcom from the 60s and 70s. He was like an art director, copywriter, creative director, producer, writer, all in one. It doesn't exist in real life, right? He was the original madman. So I was doing that to raise money, or to raise money for my first indie feature. I would pitch these commercial production companies that in the late 90s had film divisions. Every commercial production company wanted to make an indie film based on the Soderbergh, Tarantino, thrust and Clerks. Like, hey, we can make a movie with our directors. So I would pitch them money. They would all say no. But they said, do you want to direct this commercial? So I started segueing from promos to commercials, which are like cousins. So I made my first indie feature, which, can I plug it real quick?
Yeah.
It's called Dill Scallion, and it's a country Spinal Tap. And I was in like 1996. I'm a comedian, game show host, wannabe director, and I'm in my manager's office, and I say, I want to do a country Spinal Tap. And he goes, what did you just say? Come in my office. The other manager, like the partner. And his name is Larry Bresner, and he just was such a sweet man. And they repped Billy Crystal and Robin Williams, and like, kid, let's set this up. So we go to Hollywood Pictures, right? And he goes, tell them the pitch. And I go, I want to do a country Spinal Tap. And they go, sold. Who's going to write the script? And I go, well, I got a lot of comedy friends that are writers. And they go, no, we want you to write it. So I write the script. And I get paid. And I'm going to make this movie. And then, this executive left and that executive left, and 6-7 months go by, nothing's going to happen. So I buy back the script for like $75,000.
Wow.
I buy it out of Turnaround, raise the money with some producers independently. I'm talking $5,000, $10,000, $75,000, $50,000 at a time. And we made the movie for like a little under $400,000 in the late 90s. And finally, we went to Slam Dance, and it came out in basically 99 to 2000. It came out. And DVDs were new, so we did that. We did like 12 theaters around the country. Then we sold it to VH1 and some other cable places. And it is a country Spinal Tap. And the cast is amazing. Like, Well, people can Google it. You can IMDb it, but it's a great cast. Here's why I bring it up. That got me a movie called The Third Wheel that we made independently with Luke Wilson and Denise Richards are in it, but Matt Damon and Ben Affleck produced it. It's basically Project Stoplight, before they went on to do Project Greenlight. And then that got me this Miramax movie called Waking Up in Reno with Billy Bob Thornton and a young Charlize Theron and the great Patrick Swayze, of all people. And my favorite, Natasha Richardson. So none of those films popped, but I'm making commercials in between, like while I'm in post, while I'm prepping. And the movie team is getting pissed because I'll disappear for a week. And the commercials are pissed because I'm rushing to edit a movie, and it was not a good decision. This is the longest answer in the history of your podcast. So after those movies, and I did one more with Jenna Malone called Confessions of an American Girl. Terrible title. After those, Waking Up in Reno, it came out and it was a critical flop. I said, you know what? I'm going to commit 3 years to just making commercials. Because every time I go do a movie and I come back to commercials, the agency people are changed, the reps are different, my work is old. And that 3 years turned into 17 years.
So the work just kept coming.
The commercials just kept coming. And now, thanks to Netflix, like people have rediscovered these movies. But the reason that I plugged Dill Scallion, because for the 20-year anniversary, I guess, like 2 weeks ago, I put it on Vimeo for like $1.99 to rent. And I'm giving 100% of the money to St. Jude's Children's Hospital. So, people are like, you got to sell it, get it on Netflix. I'm like, just getting the music rights and back from, just give the money away. What a great charity.
Yeah. So people got to go get that one for sure. So, you did commercial production long ago. I mean, and into today, but so the industry surely has changed quite a bit. I remember, when I was doing commercials 10 years ago, people were thinking, well, this isn't going to last. People are moving online. The TV thing is going to be done soon. And, video advertising online clearly has not gone away, nor is it a dud. But how have you just sort of observed changes in the industry since you started? Is it much different today than it was when you started?
I think the basic protocol is kind of the same.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think people respect the process as much, and they expect more for less. So budgets shrink, expectations rise. Shooting, it used to be we would shoot 4:3. And then like 10 years ago, it was like, HD and 16:9, but protect for that center cut. I'm assuming the listeners know everything I'm saying, right? You're protecting for that 4:3 center cut for Grandpa's TV. But there came a time on set when I would say, hey, I don't think Grandpa is going to buy Hot Pockets. So maybe we just do our Hot Pockets commercial for 16:9 and frame it accordingly and not worry about Grandpa. Grandpa's got an old TV. So the 4:3 went away. Then comes vertical. So we invented the two-headed dragon, where I would turn one camera sideways and keep one 16:9 and keep the other vertical 9:16, which was great because we would add another camera, another AC, another operator sometimes. We justify the expense, and the editor can pick one hero take, and it works for both formats versus shooting really wide and cropping it, which we do too. Yeah. So you adapt.
So this two-headed dragon is literally a rig with two cameras side by side, or you have separate rigs for these with separate camera operators and all that?
I've done both. I've had like two heads on a slider, but it works best when there's two dollies, because like I shoot a lot of cars comedy in cars. A car in 9x16 is really hard to fit. So you're typically, you can go closer with a wider lens, but in 16:9, you can pull back and compress it a little more. So the lenses are different on each camera.
Yeah, I'd imagine that, maybe a lot of times that it happens to work out, and sometimes it must be just amazingly complicated, right? To get both shots framed well and everything that's supposed to be in the shot is in the shot in both frames. Like, that must have been a challenge and something that I assume you were sort of pioneering, right? Like the same old center cut tactics don't work when you're talking about two so distinctly different aspect ratios.
The first time I did it was for Tropicana. The first spot I did vertically was for Tropicana, which lent itself because the Trop 50, half the sugar. The bottle is tall and narrow, so it worked perfectly. But the bit was a mom and daughter talking with the orange juice there, and they're leaning on the kitchen counter or that kitchen island. Yeah. And we framed it up, but they're they're oddly close to one another. And I remember the producer, from the agency, was like, "Hey, what about if we want to put this on YouTube?" And I go, "Don't," because there weren't vertical videos on YouTube. This is like 2014 or 15. I go, "Don't." And he goes, "Well, should we frame it wide or should we?" Well, we can't do it twice. We don't have the time. Well, should we frame it wide? I go, well, if you frame it wide, not only do we then have to move the lights and C-stands out, which compromises you're doing a 9x16 center cut in that case, but we have to move the gear out. But more importantly, we're giving away the spatial relationship between mom and daughter, and people are going to go, why are they so close? Like, this is, social distancing aside, they're just right there. But in the vertical frames that you don't see beyond the left and right, you don't know. You don't think about it. So that was one of my first deals. And then with Buick and Lamorne Morris from The New Girl, now from Hulu's Woke, which I recommend, we did these Buick spots a couple of years ago. That was the first two-headed dragon. And even then, there were some vertical shots where the creative team we talked about it in prep. We said, well, let's put like banners in the top third of the 9x16. Even if you use a 16:9 shot in a vertical frame, fill it with a logo or something like that. So I think that's what we've seen evolve today here in 2020, 21.
Yeah, there's a lot of cameras are now coming with, a 9x16, guides in them, or that when you flip the camera aside that it goes, okay, this is actually bottom. But I think it's interesting in the way of like, I think the answer for that is, well, I guess the space compression is probably still going to be an issue, but of shooting at a real high resolution. So then you can cut in, but then you're just, I always think of like a Swiss Army knife. It's a knife. It can do all sorts of things, but it's a crummy knife. And I always feel like the same thing for when you try to do too much to one thing. So I can imagine shooting two simultaneous shots is difficult to be able to have them both be as good as they can be, right? If you're doing them individually, you'd make different choices for the overall, right?
Amen. There's a Buick spot that I shot for the NCAA it was in February, so the finals shipped, the final cuts with effects shipped like March 15th, 13th, like that Friday the 13th before the world shut down. And they were for the NCAA basketball finals, which were then canceled. And the spots were canceled. And they just came out a week ago because football's back. And they're cheerleaders and whatnot. So they're pretty fun. But that was one where we had the two cameras, but there were certain shots that we're just going to have to shoot this really wide and extract. And it's time consuming. My wife did a Nike job. She's a filmmaker, Jeanette Godoy. She did a Nike gig where pre-Quibi, they wanted to be able to flip the phone either way and have it work. So they ended up doing like 8K on a red and then limiting the action to this little square in the center so that you could just extract whatever you needed. And that's your Swiss Army knife. I mean, I just don't think the lensing was exploited for what the camera and the performers can do.
So how about pan and scan? Like that worked for a little bit for us, the 16:9 to 4:3. But is there any universe where pan and scan works for the vertical format?
Yes, for your Instagram videos and your TikToks and things like that. That's what that should be used for.
I remember, so, you get the DVD, you'd had the 4:3, or on the other side, it was widescreen. And I remember trying to convince my mom that you actually got more, but you had to see the black bars. And she just, no, it doesn't fill the whole screen. And it's like, yeah, you don't get it. And it's so hard to, format wise, you don't ask a painter to make their canvas work in any place, or any shape. I'm just going to cut a circle out of this and it'll still be art. It's a difficult balance, I think, when you're having to make those compromises for the overall. But then again, if it's not truly purely art in the way of expressing, and you are trying to achieve obviously a communication and whatnot through commercial, then you're gonna have to do both. I just say up the budget and we'll shoot it twice.
Yeah, I mean, to each his own method, and every case is different. But you bring up a good point. I would argue that when you step into the commercial realm as an artist, it's a spectrum, right? Like a commercial is art serving commerce to some degree. So Michelangelo was hired to paint the ceiling. He wasn't given a square canvas. They said, paint that ceiling, and he had to fill that space. So and I'm not comparing my Hot Pockets commercials to Michelangelo, but one could. And sometimes commercials are, they're strictly commerce with, technical filmmaking serving a message. And I like to think that doing comedy, you're providing there's an art to it. But you surrender to the commerce part the minute you start doing commercials. If you don't want to deal with that, make an indie film or a documentary.
It reminds me of like installation video. You go to Vegas and you see these crazy TVs that are all sorts of weird aspect ratios, and it was like, this content was made for this screen. It's only going to work here. Or like you're at an amusement park and you're in a waiting line and the whole room's full of video. Like someone had to plan that out and make that work. You weren't just going to take a camera out and shoot it and apply in those spaces and have it work. So it's interesting emerging formats and who we have to appease. Of course, I don't know at the moment they're spending as much money on Instagram video ads as they are ones running on TV, but I imagine it's getting there.
Yeah, some budgets are purely social and will rival. In the beginning, no. In the beginning, it was, hey, we've got a third of the money. It's just for social. And we're like, well, do I tell the grips that it's just for social and therefore lugging the equipment up to the second floor and the electricians lighting it? It's just for social. Like, are we going to phone it in, or we're going to work a third of the effort? But now we've seen social budgets increase to rival broadcast, and sometimes I go, oh, I forgot it's for social. Did you see the iPhone video that's vertical, starring stuntman Tom McComas? And why do I point out that the actor who is the stuntman in the vertical thing is Tom McComas? Because he was Ben Affleck's stunt double in The Third Wheel, the previously mentioned indie film.
Very good. That's a stand-up comedian, stand-up comic trick there.
Yeah, that's a trick, the callback, yeah. He also doubled me, for comedy reasons, in Popeye's chicken commercials, which for like 4 years in the early 2000s, I was the man on the street interviewer in the Popeye's chicken commercials. So I got paid as a director, I got paid as an actor, and then I did the radio commercials. And you want to know the fourth one that you would never guess that they hired me to do?
What's that?
I did the in-store announcements for the back of the kitchen. Hey, it's 10 minutes after the hour. Let's make sure that fryer grease is clean. I swear to God, that's a gig. Quarterly recordings. They would patch me into somewhere, and I was like, hey, remember to take the trash out, and then let's not leave the trash laying around in the parking lot. So give it a whirl.
That's awesome. I remember making an ad for a company, and they're like, we really like the voice on that. You think they'll do our voice directory? And
awesome.
Sure enough, voice actor will do anything for money, I imagine. So they sent it to him, and sure enough, press 5 for Chris. And
that was you.
No, it wasn't me. It wasn't my voice. It was definitely a voice actor. I'm a hack at best.
Oh, that's a bummer. All right, well, maybe that's a good spot to take a quick break and come right back. Videomaker has been the go-to website for video production professionals and enthusiasts since 1986. There's a reason a quarter of our audience has been following us for more than 10 years. Simply put, our content makes our audience better at producing video. For whatever level you're at, we have the content to get the quality of work where you want it to be. Nobody knows this better than our Videomaker Plus members. With exclusive offers and access to courses, webinars, back issues, and the digital magazine, they're able to stay up on the top of their production game. So now we want our podcast listeners to get in on the exclusive access. For a limited time only, we're offering a $100 discount to our Professional Plus annual membership. That's 42% off the normal price. To claim this exclusive deal, go to videomaker.com/2020plus. That's videomaker.com/2020plus. PLUS, not the symbol. It only takes a minute to sign up, and you'll get immediate, unrestricted access to all of our content. Don't wait. This offer will not be around for long, and you just can't ignore the benefits. That's $100 you can save that can go straight to new gear, software, accessories, whatever you want for your production setup. Don't wait. This offer won't be around for long. Once again, claim your exclusive offer now at videomaker.com/2020plus. Okay, and we're back. So Jordan, we just sort of touched on this idea that commercial work can, at least for a director, maybe sometimes if they're as multi-talented as you are, can bleed into other types of work. In your case, acting and voiceover. Have you had any experiences where your commercial work has led into other non-commercial work, like more straightforward corporate work or anything of that nature? Have you heard of that kind of phenomenon occurring?
I've heard of that phenomenon. And I should be clear, I don't do a lot of the voice stuff. I did one for a pharmaceutical 2-minute video. So that might be answering both realms that you're talking about. I did the voiceover, and it was I called it a corporate video. It was made for pharmacists, but it was sure well funded. So it was like a commercial budget for a 2.5-minute video airing or played at some convention for pharmacists to tell them about a shingles vaccine. And I have 3 kids in college. Am I going to say no? And they heard my voice on another bit. No, that it led to a voiceover for another project where they saw it on who did the voice on that shingles vaccine thing? I go, well, that's me. And I got that gig. But that's, those are few and far between.
Yeah. So I guess, kind of the common way that directors often get business is through ad agencies who are selling the ad placements, and they need need some production, and they contact independents or a production house or one. Is that how you primarily are getting your work, or do you work directly for an agency?
No, both. I mean, I've been doing it a long time, so I have agency clients that will call me directly. I refer to those as house accounts. Like since 2005, I've been doing Valley Toyota dealer spots for an agency, Lane Terralever out of Phoenix. And they're the nicest group of people. It's like a family reunion every fall. In fact, we're prepping them now. and they call me directly, and we mount up a production, and it's my same team as if the production company sends me out. But the game is that the agency has a board for their client, a sales rep who acts like an agent for the company, the production company, pimps me out. And if they bite at my work and it's a match, then we do a phone call. And that is the majority of my work. Like, my bread and butter is agencies sending out a board, doing a call, doing a treatment. Now it's a Zoom. You used to be able to do a conference call. Now I got to have the ring light. I'm worried about my fuzzy face now because on Zoom I'm looking good. And let's bring it back to the beginning. With Zoom, I can actually read the room. Like, with Zoom, I can see if my bits are, I'm pitching a comedy spot. I want to kind of liven up the Zoom room, and I can see who's nodding, who's smiling. Whereas on a conference call, there's this stagnant pause.
Yeah.
Thank God for COVID.
Said no one ever.
So in the case of, that instance where, like, the pharmaceutical company that wants you to do the shingles vaccine video, I'd imagine that an agency is just simply not soliciting that kind of work.
No, that was FCB Health, that was an agency.
Oh, really?
There was a creative team that, collaborated. One of the fun things about that job, I say it was well funded, but we couldn't afford it. It was 2 pharmacists in 2 different pharmacies. And the competing director, wanted to do it on location. And I was like, I can't do that. I don't know how to go in a day and do 2. I know how to redress stuff, but just loading into a pharmacy and we're going to rent it and all. So I built it on a stage, and we rented all the prop shelving that they put the drugs on. And then with a super duper camera, we took a still shot of the shelving full of drugs and printed it like 6-7 feet tall on gator board on foam core, and slightly out of focus, printed it slightly out of focus, and lined the back of the stage like a white cyc. Just lean these things against the wall. So it looks like there's a 3rd and 4th layer of pharmaceutical shelving with drugs on them. It's the same picture over and over.
So if you look closely, you see the same pattern of model or whatever.
Yeah, but they're through the cracks of the other real life 3D shelves. And they would have been out of focus anyway.
Yeah. Interesting illusion. So the place must have just looked way larger than, it originally was.
It was like full of drugs.
Yeah, all the drugs you could want. So tell us about the commercial directing film school.
Oh, thank you for asking. I mean, it's not the reason I'm on the show. I'm flattered to be on the show regardless, but it has been. Okay, so I'm older than you guys, right?
I
yes,
assume so.
by a long shot.
Yeah. Well, I don't have kids in college.
Your uncle.
Yeah.
If my beard was growing in, it would look pretty similar to yours, I think.
You got a little gray going?
Oh yeah, for sure. We're probably not that far.
Baby faced, Mike. So I always loved, from concept to completion, the life cycle of a commercial, and that the commercial director is a midwife, that is a dressmaker. The client and the agency have come up with an idea. They're going to go to the ball. They need a dress. And they have an idea of what they want. And they come to the dressmaker, and the dressmaker goes, oh, I think it should be like this. And, this sleeveless, it'll fit your body. It'll flatter you. And then the client's like, I don't like the way my fat arms look. So the dressmaker goes, okay, let's put on sleeves. Like, you're not going to fall on the sword for your dress, but you're going to make it a damn pretty dress. And that always fascinated me. While coming from indie film and being hired for some films where the director has, a lot of indie film, like his final cut, right? You're the queen. I say queen. I could mean king, but I want to point out that I'm just not pronoun specific and I'm very open-minded.
It's 2020.
It's 2020. So I wanted to do a seminar, and I started commercial directing boot camp in 2015, 5 years ago. And it's now 15 people because we're going to be in a huge room and socially distanced, but it's usually 20 filmmakers. It's one day in person. And I've been doing the boot camp usually three times a year since 2015. And we give away a seat long before diversity was hip. We gave away one seat, we still do, to a person from an underrepresented population. So basically a non-cis, straight, white male gets a free ride. You can learn more at commercialdirectingbootcamp.com. So then the pandemic hits, and I have to cancel the boot camp over the summer. I postponed it. It's coming up. So I'm sitting around. I lost 2 jobs. I want to say I lost 3, but I didn't officially have the third one. But in my mind, I was going to get it. And I'm like, what do I do? So my son, Ben Brady, he has a red. I have my little office. I have a gray wall over here, painted gray just for shoots. And I had a lot of behind the scenes material. And so I didn't so much cannibalize the boot camp, but I did just a 2-hour online thing. And I put it up it's called Commercial Directing Masterclass. And it has behind the scenes. It has treatments you download, agency briefs. You can compare like the agency, what they sent out to the director, and then what I wrote to get the job. And I have some other director's treatments up there too. And I just explained sort of the mindset of the commercial director, how you get jobs, like what we were talking about a second ago. And I threw it up online, and it's been doing really well. So I thought, well, I'm going to continue the boot camp. I've got the master class. Now I have a case study about directing cats. And this was the fun thing. I started giving the masterclass away to community colleges for free because they don't have the money to go to the Fancy Pants Film School. Mm-hmm. So I do the Fancy Pants Film Schools. I just did a thing with Chapman where we do a Q&A after the kids took the masterclass. And so the film school is the umbrella.
So I watched the film school this morning. I didn't watch all of it. It's actually quite long. You said 2 hours. And I learned a lot. I was making commercials for 5 or 6 years. And, it just reminded me as I was watching this that, a lot of people, when they're young and they're in, high school or going into film school, everyone wants to do narrative films or documentary. But commercial filmmaking is actually a really great career path for anyone who wants to work with motion pictures, just because there's money there, right? Like we have big corporations that are writing checks for this kind of stuff. And so, I really recommend it, frankly, for anyone who wants to get a career started and, who doesn't have those kind of very lofty career goals of being Steven Spielberg or whoever they're going to be.
But Mike, if you do have... Go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna sort of deviate to the directing cats, but no, you feel free.
I was just going to say that I did basically 4 indie films in 5 or 6 years, and if I had the skills that commercial directing taught me, I would have been a better, sharper filmmaker. Like your Michael Bay's started in Ridley started in commercials. Music videos. Mm-hmm. But more importantly, the people skills that you learn directing commercials to navigate with an agency, that would translate to working with a studio. So, Ted Melfi, who did Hidden Figures and St. Vincent with Bill Murray, if you ever saw that movie.
Yeah.
He did tons of commercials. We were at the same company. Super nice guy, by the way. But he cut his teeth on commercials, and the people skills, he'll tell you this, the people skills he learned dealing with clients and agencies allowed him to work with the studios and navigate those waters. That's a different skill set than knowing where to put the camera and how to, do a 3-point lighting setup.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Making commercials certainly teaches you a lot about client relations. It helps you develop quite a thick skin, frankly. Exactly. You can't be too married to your ideas in commercial production, right?
Budget. Yeah.
So you sort of teased the directing cats thing, which I didn't watch the directing cats course, but I was it looks quite compelling. So can you just sort of give us a little teaser, like what is, I don't know, you don't want to give away the secret sauce, I guess, before people get to take the course, but what is it about cats that really justifies a course dedicated to them, as in this is really separate from directing dogs, for example?
Well, directing cats is more, as I say, if you can direct cats, you can direct anything. So it's not really aimed at the niche within a sub niche of people that want to direct cats, but it will help. It's just the problem solving. Like one of the bits. Okay, so Scooter the neutered cat is a cat who's been neutered, and I got the brief like umpteen years ago. And I've been doing the commercials every other year. We do a bunch of commercials with Scooter the neutered cat. And so one year we did Marmalade, who just got spayed, and she's the lady cat. So it was and Scooter makes a cameo. And my whole pitch for Scooter the neutered cat, like the brief was a song and a picture of a cat with like Ray-Bans. And so I said, well, why don't we put like a turtleneck sweater and a gold medallion and really cool Wayfarers, and we'll make him it's like a catsploitation film from the 70s. And that influenced the song, and I got the job, and it's been working with so many great creatives. So I did a behind the scenes for one of the shoots that was going to be a part of the masterclass, but I realized it wasn't. It was so specific. So I found a way to give filmmakers the brief and the treatment and the production notes and the behind the scenes. It's like 20-minute behind the scenes. And it shows you have to have patience, leadership, how you can take an agency's idea and bend it and shape it and make it your own without breaking it in two. Like that's how you get the job. You improve the idea. So directing cats, a case study, I feel can be applied to any commercial or corporate, assignment that you're going after.
So there certainly is a deeper a learning objective here, but I just have to ask, with the cat and the turtleneck and the Wayfarers, how did that work out?
It worked out great. We had two cats. One, cats usually come in twos. They don't train black cats because in the telecine, it's really hard to see the features of the cat because it's such a rich, you just see glowing eyes. So like we use gray cats, which have a better contrast when you put a tuxedo hat and necktie on them. Scooter was trained for about 2 weeks to wear the turtleneck. There was Roscoe, the cat, who played Scooter in close-ups and better for like still shots and move. And then I forget the other cat's name, but it was better for like going down the stairs and doing action stuff. And here's the thing. Any animal commercial, it's an A to B move. When it's edited together, you're like, how did they train the dog to like go up and look and then turn around and go back to the car and then jump on the couch? It's all edited. It's all A to B. Someone holds the motions for them to stay still. When you roll the camera, you cue them, they leave frame or they go from here to there. And then you cut and they jump on the couch. Then you cut and they go to the car. So it's classic filmmaking trickery that's been around since the Lumiere brothers.
I would imagine the hardest part is just to keep the cat from, just clawing the hell out of you where you're trying to put the tuxedo on him, or the turtleneck in this case.
Oh. Yeah, and the set has to be so zen.
Yeah, I'll bet.
You have to be so patient. And as a director, you have to have this relationship with the trainers. I've been working with Judy from Bow Wow Wow Productions for years, and like she'll just be like, Jordan, no, it's not going to happen. I'm like, come on, Judy, let's try, Judy. Let's try. If my cat runs out the window, man, it's just got to sit on the windowsill for 1 second. We'll roll the camera, you put her there, and then we leave. Come on, Judy, we can do it. Okay, for you. So the people skills. The craziest thing for this marmalade thing that's in the behind the scenes, they wanted a mama cat who was not spayed to have a litter of kittens. Mm-hmm. And we were shooting in, I forget what time of year it was, but Judy goes, Jordan, cats don't have kittens this time of year. So even if we could train kittens, they're not around. Like they're seasonal, apparently.
Huh, I didn't know that.
So we ended up using little baskets from the craft store. We put wheels on them to make them look like strollers, like little baby carriage things. Mm-hmm. And we just had tails wagging from the covered baby basket.
Nice. And it's probably a lot easier to shoot than a basket full of kittens too, I bet.
Oh, clever. Yeah. College.
Awesome. Okay, so Jordan, if you listen to the podcast, this next question shouldn't surprise you, I guess. But if you could give us one tip, give our listeners one tip, or one secret, I should say, about how they can, I guess, be better commercial filmmakers or become commercial filmmakers in the first place, what would that one secret or tip be?
I knew you were going to ask a form of this question. And I want to give a tip that is specifically for commercials, but can be applied to all kinds of filmmaking. And that is, don't always start with the wide shot. The wide shot, the AD and the cinematographer will implore you to start with the wide shot and work your way in, because that's filmmaking tradition. Mm-hmm. In a lot of scenes, that works. But in certain instances, specifically with a commercial, it takes so much energy to build that wide shot. And the client and the agency are picking it apart for performances, but we all know it's going to maybe end up on the floor in the edit room, or it's going to be like 1.7 seconds in the commercial.
Right.
So if you're working with a kid, start with that kid's close-up. And then when the kids burn out and lost their focus, they can just stand there in the wide shot. They don't have to perform. And when the client and the agency go, could he say it like this? You go, no, he already said it in the close-up, and that's where you're going to use it in the edit. The kid can just stand there. So
when you say, sorry, not to interrupt, but when you say don't start with the wide shot, you're not saying don't start the sequence, as it's edited with a wide shot, but rather don't shoot it first.
Correct. I'm saying don't start your shoot day with the wide shot. And if you can on a commercial, and I'm giving away the keys to the kingdom here, start with the product shot. And even the agency's like, why are we starting with the product shot? And the producer, she'll say, why don't we do that while they're wrapping? Well, if you shoot the product shot, let's say it's a tennis shoe, while the crew is wrapping, they're high-fiving and it's loud and they're wrapping cables and eating pizza that just came in, you're disrespecting that client. And the client was so patient all day while you shot the comedy or the emotional sequence or whatever it was. They really care about that product shot. Like in Popeye's chicken shoots, we would do these comedy bits and the client would go, hey man, Jordan, I just care about the pieces and the prices. When are you going to shoot the chicken? So I would shoot the chicken early in the day and he'd be like, man, we're going to put a $5.99 next to that shot. And it's going to move some product. Y'all do the comedy. I'm going to the hotel.
All right.
The tennis shoe client for Adidas one time, we shot the product right before lunch, like a push in on the tennis shoe on the basketball court. He goes, hey, that's all I really care about. I trust you with the comedy. I'm going back to Portland.
That is great advice. In a lot of cases, I don't know if it's the case always with your clients, but business owners or stakeholders in a commercial, they have a lot of pride in their product for sure. And sort of there's that fluffing of their ego, the thing that they have dedicated their lives to, or at least the last several years of their career, is just good client management.
Yeah.
I'm sincere in wanting to respect how much they do care about that product shot.
Totally.
It's not to get them off my back or anything. It's to say, hey, I understand and acknowledge this is important. And if you schedule it in the first half of the day, at least, the team is going to be in, rock star filmmaker technician mode too. Mm-hmm. So it's going to be a better shot than at the end of the day when it's like, oh, we already put that on the truck. Well, I got to go get it. Well, we'll just do this. Hey, we're losing the light. Respect the product. There's your podcast.
There you go. There you go. All right.
How about we do this? If your listeners are interested in taking commercial directing masterclass, the online masterclass, if they put in the code Nifty50, one word, Nifty50, it'll take $50 off of that course.
That is a great offer.
Don't tweet it. Don't put it on Instagram or anything. Just this is for our tribe.
Yeah.
Videomaker listener.
And we won't mention how much Chris likes to badmouth the Nifty 50.
Oh, it's plastic.
What
crap. It's cheap lens. I like 50 mils, but the $100 50 millimeter lens, it can go in the trash. That's the Nikon or Canon. They all have a 50 mil that's around $100, and it's just always plastic crap. So
the 50 millimeter prime is an important lens, though, and it's an easy to remember code, I guess, for redeeming $50 off
Nifty
of
50 because Chris doesn't like them.
Yeah,
but I do like commercials and making them. So it's
and
cool
nicer 50 millimeter lenses.
Yes,
it's an important lens.
Now, in my $10 book, Commercial Directing Voodoo.
Wow, printed.
Available on Amazon, yeah. I will say in here that the 40 is the funniest lens. The 40 millimeter mimics the human eye. So it's a little more sexy than the 35, which is kind of our go-to. But it's not as compressed as the 50. So this is, look at this. See that spine label? See how nice that is?
It's kind of difficult to tell on the webcam.
Well, it's just got a nice little thing, and then you can read Commercial Directing Voodoo and my name. That might be better. This is why I put blank pages in the back of the book for you to keep some notes on. And I'll tell you why. Because that made the book 102 pages. If you're less than that, then they staple the book and it becomes like a big pamphlet.
So you got perfect bound there.
Yeah, you need that perfect binding.
You need the perfect binding. Nice matte finish. Full of illustrations. I illustrated the book too with stick figures.
All right.
Nice.
Yeah.
All right, Jordan. Thanks so much for joining us. It was a great conversation.
Thanks for having me. Continued success with the podcast and with the information and the entertainment. Like I said, I was listening to Noam
Kroll.
The micro budget stuff. Did I say his name wrong?
Noam Kroll.
Noam Kroll.
Kroll.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Noam's going to hate me. I started following. This is what I love. I listen to your show and then I immediately go follow those people on Twitter and Instagram. And it's like I have a new friend.
There you go.
So
that's pretty much how social media works, right? As soon as you follow someone, you're basically friends. That's what it feels like anyways.
Until someone says their political view and then you're like, I don't know.
Yeah, right. unfriend, unfollow.
Yeah.
Guys, thanks for having me. This has been a blast.
All right. Yep. Jordan, thanks for joining us. And thanks everyone for tuning in. We'll catch you next time. Big thanks to Jordan Brady for joining us. You can get his commercial filmmaking masterclass at commercialdirectingfilmschool.com. And again, use the promo code NIFTY50 and you can save $50 on that. Also, if you want to follow Jordan on social media, you can find him at Jordan Brady on all the things. And if once you do that, you and he are basically friends. So do that today. As always, if you like the podcast, we would love it if you gave us a 5-star review on iTunes and follow us on Spotify or iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts. It's a big help. So for Chris Monlux and everyone here at Videomaker, I've been Mike Wilhelm, and this is the Videomaker Podcast. We'll catch you next time.